when wrong view dominates the heart. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to see the Dhamma. That's why Lord Buddha started the Noble Eightfold Path with right view. One cannot truly overemphasize the importance of it, because it is supposed to be with us all the time. Because wrong view is with us. It's been with us forever. So Dhamma cannot be seen, let alone practiced, in the presence of wrong view, Miccā Ditthi, or Ditthi as Lord Buddha would call it. Oftentimes, especially those of us who come from Western cultures, who have been trained in Western modes of thinking, we like to take the Dhamma on our own terms. We like the Dhamma to fit the way we like other things in our lives to fit. Just like when you go and shop for some clothes or whatever it is that you want to get, food specific for your diet. So we have a tendency of wanting the Dhamma to be on our own terms. And that's never going to work. That's never going to work. That's why we need teachers to show us, to remind us, to help us, to guide us. And that's another word we don't like, to be guided. I'm okay, I'm okay. I'm getting just exactly what I need from the Dhamma. Thank you very much. I mean, what else do you want? I'm meditating, I'm practicing my sila as best as I can, so I should be fine. We're not doing any favors to anybody, whether to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, by sitting, dedicating our time, energy, honesty to the practice. Nobody else other than ourselves. So you're not doing anybody any favors by sitting, by becoming mindful every single moment that you're able to capture yourself when the mind is all over the place. The teacher doesn't benefit in any way. The Buddha doesn't benefit in any way. It's you who benefits. Nobody else, ultimately. And for that reason, the effort has to be superlative. Otherwise, we would be fine. You have countless teachers out there, including infested into the Dhamma circles, ideologies, ways of thinking that have been going on for centuries, where people say, well, you already have Buddha nature. You don't have to try hard. You just have to wake up. Nonsense. As far as the Dhamma is concerned, the Dhamma that Lord Buddha taught. We've been accumulating dust. We've been accumulating a lot of junk and gunk, trash, unwholesome behavioral tendencies for a long time. So if we are practicing hard, if we are wanting to practice with so much dedication, it is to completely remove all that from the mind, from the heart, so you could see for yourself, yatha bhutang pajanati, to be able to see Dhamma patubhavo, to be able to see the Dhamma appear. Who? You, the person. And that is how you get to experience the Dhamma, the wonders that are provided by the Dhamma. But no one can show that to you unless you're practicing the Dhamma way, according to the Dhamma, not according to your terms. Whatever you think, that should be the Dhamma. No. The Buddha was very stern when he needed to be. And that's another thing which we don't see in bhikkhus today, or teachers. Everybody's trying to be soft. Everybody's trying to be on everyone's good side, which is such a great disservice to the Dhamma, to themselves, of course, to begin with, and especially to the students. Students are expecting to go into Dhamma talk or to Dhamma sharing when you used to have these huge gatherings, auditoriums get filled up when this famous monk is showing up, and people would pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to go see, which I struggle with understanding. How can a person speak on the Dhamma and charge money for it? That's an oxymoron. It does not work. Lord Buddha never charged a penny. Never. But people would go to these places, to these events, or any Dhamma sharing, wanting to feel good during, especially, the sharing. A person needs to be shaken up from all the dust, You can't ask the dust on the table, please, could you remove yourself from the table? You need to use some effort. And any type of energy expenditure will require some type of efforting, spending some energy. We have to shake ourselves up every once in a while. Am I on the path? Or am I fooling myself? Am I just going through the routines, which many of us are on this planet, when it comes to the Dhamma? Yeah, I did the 10-day retreat, so I did this, I did that. Means nothing. You just extended the capacity of your ego, your conceit. How soft is your heart with every sitting, after every sitting? Are you able to see clearly your hang-ups? Or is it still sacrosanct, untouchable, for you to even question your motives? Otherwise, there's a problem if we're not doing that. Lord Buddha was very clear, and his Arya Savakas were very clear. Even in the 20th century, we've had some wonderful, amazing Arahant teachers. When Ajahn Mun would give a talk, his students would start to shiver. Every time he spoke, he would say something that pierced into the heart of at least one bhikkhu or listener in the audience, because they knew he was talking straight to them, because of how weak they have become in their practice, how delusional they've become, how arrogant they've become. But that is the way that a compassionate teacher moves, does, lives one's life, because they have become the Dhamma. And they come from a purely, 100%, absolutely Mahakaruna. They have no benefit whatsoever in helping the student get shaken off of all that's there, the dry mud, layers of thick mud that have been accumulating. So it's always the Dhamma's way, not ours. That is crucial for us to remember. Because after all, it is the natural law of things in order for our wisdom and heart to grow. That's the only way out of suffering. It's not the amount of work we put as far as how much time we're spending, almost keeping tabs. How long did I sit, or da, 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 da. That's all good and well, but what's happening underneath? Is there something else, something ugly, something smelly growing underneath it? Are we replacing one with the other? In the United States, there is this, I'm sure there's in other countries too, but there's this thing called house flipping. When a person goes and buys decrepit, broken up, really a house that is in shambles for a very cheap price or a lower price. And what they do is they start cleaning it up from the surface. They patch it up, they do another paint job, if there's holes, this and that, they do a very, very superficial work on it. And then after a few months, they put it back on sale, the house. Now, the person who comes sees it, it's completely different than the house that the owner now bought it. Why? Because it was all the work that was done. It's all cosmetic. And the person buys it and buys along with it the structure of this so-called house that is in shambles. They're buying the cosmetics. So we need to be very honest with what is our practice. Is it cosmetic? Are we trying to make the Dhamma be our way? Or just allow the Dhamma to be and to reveal itself? And all we have to do is be humble and just follow the path and see what is happening. That's why we need sati. Sati and sampajanya. That's enough already of a camera, a detecting camera that observes what's happening, not in the world around us. First, we need to know what's happening in us, in the mind. What are the lies we're telling us ourselves? It's always the Dhamma's way, because our way is always infested by the kileśas, by the defilements. So we're in no way capable of dictating as to how the Dhamma should comply with our worldviews, our paradigms. And that's why Lord Buddha called it Miccāditthi, the views. And oftentimes we don't talk about it. It's like, oh yeah, views. So I'm in here, I'm studying the Dhamma, I'm reading the suttas, I'm doing retreats, so that should be enough. So I must have right view. Okay, we're good to go. No, 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 no. It's not as simple or as easy as that. Is there right view in every single gesture I make? Or am I just doing it cosmetically? Doing the sila cosmetically? Talking to other people about sila? Are my views the same about the worldview? Basically, have I used the Dhamma as merely an embellishment? Embellishment, an accessory. And that's what many of us have done with the Dhamma in our lives. Convoluted it, stretched it, squeezed it, and told it, this is what I accept you to be. So don't you dare change on me. And if you do, I'm just going to go ahead and switch teachings or teachers, or a new habit comes up. But we never ask the right questions as to where does the problem lie? Where does this nasty smell come from? Why do I feel pain? Why do I feel dukkha every time I have a similar interaction, or something happens, I hear something, or I see something? It's not happening anywhere other than here with us. That's one of the reasons why we have to be extremely responsible and own up and not be children, infantile in our approach. Meaning we have to own up when Ajahn Mun or Ajahn Mahabua or Webu Sayadaw would say something to listeners, or when Lord Buddha would say something to listeners. Yes, the natural tendency is to kind of get into the self-preservation mode or self-protective mode, defensive. But that is exactly what needs to be observed in the mind of the person. Why is this thing triggering me? Let me check. Is it my way or the Dhamma way? That is already a very powerful litmus test. Is it my way or the Dhamma way? I mean, if it's my way, then we have no problem in our heads, right? Because after all, that's what we've been doing throughout eons. And where did that get us? But here we have a chance. Here we have an opportunity to be in this very rare opportunity of being a human being. And even more so of a great, great opportunity is encountering the Dhamma. Some of us for the first time. So wrong views about the Dhamma stemming from oneself is becoming quite widespread. And when teachers become stern, try to shake up things, they're not after popularity, if you noticed. Lord Buddha was never an entertainer. You're never going to find him telling jokes. You're never going to find him wearing a baseball cap or something, laughing, jumping around. He's going to be stern. He's going to shake us up if we need shaking. Otherwise, he's going to be as tender, as soft, as loving, observably. Because even when Lord Buddha would admonish or criticize someone, he would come from a place of loving kindness. Always. But it's our views that are the problem. The views that we possess, that we hold on to for dear life. It's like the lenses we wear. What if the lenses are dark? I can't see. I'm going to be able to only see whatever the lenses allow. So the presence of the kileśas in the heart will never allow us to unfold how the world within us and outside of us truly is. So long as we're holding on to the kileśas and never questioning them, even under the guise of I'm practicing Dhamma. Samadhi also is very refreshing. It's comforting. It's that sense of, when you quench your thirst after having been outside under the sun for a long time, as you drink a glass of cold water. Every single time. Because holding on to the kileśas is so hot, it burns. But oftentimes we prefer being burned rather than being humble and saying, you know what? It's not going to be my way. I don't want it to. That's why I'm here. I want to allow the Dhamma and to allow Dhamma's way to take root in my life. And then we're talking. That's when things become interesting. And you stop being so burned. You stop having this internal fighting going on with you. The burning happens because this is me. This is who I am. This is mine. These are my opinions. That. Asmimana, the conceit of I am. This is me. These are my ideas. Well, that and Dhamma cannot coexist. Don't fool yourselves. It's impossible. And when Ajahn Mun or somebody of that stature would say something to a student, yeah, it can be earth-shattering. But there's so much of a comforting release after that. This is not just some words, Asmimana. We have collected a lot of ideologies. We used to collect them in other traditions, other methods of thinking, other endeavors in our lives, perhaps. But now many of us come to the Dhamma and we continue doing that, except that it's like that flipping of houses scenario. We're adding a new color, new primer, new something to cover up a new embellishment. We were wearing garments that were one color. Now we took them off because they they went out of style. Changes of thinking, influences, who's around us. And now we chose to wear this other color garment, this other embellishment. Well, Dhamma doesn't work like that. We're only fooling ourselves. This is what I want. This is not what I want. I don't want that. So long as we have that, we have conceit. And so long as we have conceit, we don't have right view. And so long as we don't have right view, we are not even on the path. It's so systematic. It's so beautiful the way Lord Buddha presented it. It's so airtight. There's not a way that you can find a loophole to come in and to say, well, it doesn't fit here. If I did this, they flow into each other. The path, the Noble Eightfold Path, every segment of it. And conceit is at the crux of being self-serving. Self-serving versus selfless. In this practice, if we're being self-serving, again, we have nothing to do with the Dhamma. Because self-serving, that attitude, has no place in the Dhamma. No place. Not giving our all, whether we're practicing the precepts or being generous or having humility towards the Dhamma. Not having this is tantamount to being a thief, actually. A thief. Because we're going in to get something. For whom? For me. For me. What's in it for me? I want to get more of this. Who? I want to accumulate more of this for me. That is something I see in students, in practitioners, in people. Especially when we're practicing Dhamma, we need to be very cognizant of whether we're carrying this attitude of coming through the back door or window, rather, breaking in. Am I a thief coming in to get some secret codes, some secret algorithms to life for living a happier life? But without being all in. You know, the thief is not going to come into the house and stay there and move in. No, no, no. They come in, take whatever valuables they could find and leave. They don't go all in. They don't relinquish everything and say, nope, that's it. This is my home. They're dishonest. So we need to check whether we're in it for the right reasons. Or at least to know what our reasons are. Am I coming in just to have a self-serving intention behind my efforts to practice the Dhamma, to practice Sila, for example? Who am I trying to appease, for example? Sometimes people say, Bhante, forgive me, I've broken this precept. Well, I'm not, last time I checked, I'm not a priest, or, you're not coming in for a convention, a confessional. This is not a confessional booth, There's no such thing. I mean, if you're breaking the precept or if you're keeping it, good on you. I mean, if you're keeping it, but if you're breaking it, you're, excuse me, you're already suffering. So if you're unwilling to break a precept, at least in principle, then that should be stemming from your desire to not feel dukkha. Not to appease anybody. You're not doing me a favor by keeping precepts. You're actually protecting yourself and everyone else around you. So the attitude is extremely important. I mean, the thief going into the house to steal has a very, solid intention. They know what they want. They're not fooling themselves about anything. They're very self-serving and they're looking after one thing, their own profit, their own interests. And yes, the interests might change, but the thief remains a thief. What's in it for me? That turns us into nothing more than thieves, coming in to take and take and take and give nothing back. So there's self-centeredness versus selflessness. Selflessness. One, actually the first one, self-centeredness, refuses to give of oneself. No, I have to have this and I have to have this in my life. I have to make sure my practice is going like this. Oh, you need help over there? Well, you have to wait. Or that might never come, because I need to make sure that I'm okay here. My daily agenda is done, my routines, everything, it's perfect. And then I'll see if I can have the time to indulge in serving, in giving something back. That is self-centeredness. That is all conceit. There's no right view there. And the person might convince themselves that they are practicing the Dhamma, but they're not. They're practicing the Dhamma on their terms. And there can never be Dhamma in such a scenario. Never. There needs to be a genuine involvement with life. Keeping our doors open for, windows open for whatever Dhamma we're practicing to permeate out. If it is something wonderful, if you're practicing Sila and practicing precepts, it's already going to show in your life, but don't keep it stagnant. Don't shut the windows, don't close all the doors and lock them up. Keep the window, keep a crack in the window, let it permeate out. Share some of that. Share some of your abilities, your time, your energy, your skill set. Every one of us has some skill sets. Don't hoard them. Don't hold them in. Don't keep them really close to your jugular and say, this is mine. And it's only going to be on my terms. No, the Dhamma might bring you face to face with a situation where someone might need something. Not necessarily from you, but they might need something. But many of us have come to the Dhamma to take, never to give anything back. And that is wrong. Absolutely, 100% wrong. If Lord Buddha was like that, forget about it. We would never have had Dhamma. He left his life, his crown, his family, his child, his kingdom. He left it all, not just to attain it for himself, to find the path where he could end the cycle of samsara, of constant struggling and pain and dukkha. He didn't just do it for himself. Some might argue, well, he became the Buddha and that's when he gave it. He shared it. Well, not exactly. Even as Bodhisattva, Siddhartha, he was actually sharing what he was gaining. King Bimbisara, long before Lord Buddha became the Buddha, he was so moved by Siddhartha Gautama, the ascetic. He had seen him once. And then he sent messengers, not messengers, but scouts, to follow him. Who is this recluse? Go find out who he is. Where does he live? Is he pretending? Because there's something about him. That something about him is also part of service, of giving, of allowing yourself to permeate. It could be a smile. It could be a gesture. Kind. Something that is allowing you to come outside the confines of this is me, this is mine, this is who I am. What's in it for me mentality. You're coming out of that. And King Bimbisara, the following day, he was there with his whole congregation. It was just like, who are you? You must be a different being. And Lord Buddha said, I'm still searching. I'm not ready to, I don't have the Dhamma. But look at his humility. Because the king Bimbisara gave him half of his kingdom. He said, if you walk away from this lifestyle, you will be my partner in ruling this country. You will own everything. And he smiled. He said, I already had everything. And then King Bimbisara says, then please, when you do find the Dhamma, please come back and teach me. And Lord Buddha even offers him the service by saying, yes. He agrees. He says, yes, I will. That is living according to the terms of the Dhamma, not being self-centered. We must have a healthy relationship with the Dhamma. It must be based on respect, like any relationship. I mean, could there be a healthy relationship without respect? Even so-called love, which is most of the time, if not always, physical, sexual attraction, or some kind of an attraction, but even that dies out. But respect remains. And respect can even grow into love. Love will fade. It comes and goes, and usually goes without coming back. But respect, it can continuously grow in a person, in that dynamic called a relationship, making the relationship grow. But any relationship will be severely damaged and break into bits and pieces if any one of the members of this relationship holds this position of what's in it for me, the self-centeredness. The moment we have that, that's like the venom, that's the poison that will kill the relationship. Because somebody's going to notice, and it's not going to land well. So let us not fool ourselves into having this make-believe attitude, make-believe relationship, when all we want is to get something from the Dhamma and not giving anything back to it. It's never going to work, because self-service or self-centeredness goes contrary to what the Dhamma is trying to do, because that's the law of nature, that's existence. It's permeating in every single leaf, dead or alive. But the self-centeredness versus selflessness is one that keeps us inside the locked up room as we continue to hoard, collect, gather more, and more. And this becomes another source for our complacency. Because when we shut our doors and windows, we're saying, thank you, I'm self-sufficient, I'm getting just exactly what I want, thank you very much, stay out. No trespassing outside. We have that sign as well. That is spiritual pride. That is spiritual greed. In fact, it's beyond greed. It is being a thief. It doesn't have humility in it. It doesn't have sharing in it. Lord Buddha says repeatedly how we should never waste time when it comes to doing good, when it comes to giving something to someone who needs it. Now, giving can also be in the form, it doesn't have to be only monetary, financial, by the way. Dana comes in so many different shapes. Some of us might not be able to provide our skill set, our time, our talents, etc., for whatever reason, but we might be able to give service in the form of funds and things. That's fine, but that's not all. Being concerned about your neighbor, living across the street, when they suddenly, in the middle of the night, they start coughing unusually. And you're sitting comfortably at your own place, but you hear it loud and clear. Guess what? Selflessness means you're going to open up your door and probably not even find those slippers or shoes and run out barefoot across the street and check on your neighbor if he or she is okay, because they were coughing unusually. Are you okay? Are you okay? That is also service. That is selflessness. There's care involved. Isn't that what Mettā is all about? Loving kindness in action. In action. You put it into manifested form, where another human being or another being feels it, is moved by it, is protected by it, feels cared for by it. Otherwise, it's just, we're fooling ourselves with this whole practice thing. This Dhamma and discipline has been entrusted to us by Lord Buddha, and every single Arya Savaka, every single Arahant who has given up so much and everything, not just so much, but everything, to ensure that it can also influence other people's lives to the better. That itself should shake us out of our complacency. The lies we tell ourselves that I am practicing. Yes, but on whose terms? We must be quick in doing good. So what we have in the world today is spiritual miserliness, stinginess, miserly with what we get, unwilling to share what we have. Why shouldn't that hostess, why shouldn't that person who's helping us at somewhere, let's say a fast food place or somebody we see on the street, why shouldn't they get some of the good experiences we're having inside of us, in our world, in our mind? Why shouldn't they get a smile from me? No. What if they think I'm crazy? What if? These are all excuses to hoard, to continue to keep for yourself what you have a semblance of in your mind, that this is happiness. Well, other people need happiness too, you know. The Dhamma is also a lot about giving. That's why I laugh, I scoff at the ideologies that Buddhists later on, some Buddhists came up with as calling the Lord Buddha's path, the earliest teachings, according to the earliest teachings of Lord Buddha's path, as self-centered. And they came up with all these other ideologies as if to present for the first time in the Dhamma compassion, as if there was no compassion. You look at Lord Buddha's life, you look at any of the Arahant's life, it's permeating with compassion. What are you talking about? They were the embodiment of it. Not somebody talking about compassion, writing books on it, giving retreats or this on compassion. Somebody told me recently of an ad they saw for a therapist, psychotherapist, and there are all these terms. I want the therapist to be this way, that, and this, and this, and this. And also have been trained in compassion. Trained in compassion. Certified in compassion, apparently. They're doing that. Who knew? We cannot possess the Dhamma, you know. Lord Buddha himself never possessed the Dhamma. How could he? He had become the Dhamma. We cannot keep this much of the Dhamma, not even this much. But we can surely live it. But to live it means to also share it, and share it fully. Fully. I've come across teachers in the past where they would have one hand behind their back, as it were, or two hands behind their backs. They're very careful how much they're going to share with you. They're afraid that the student might go beyond them somehow, because they are not practitioners themselves. Because for them, it was just a matter of collecting, hoarding ideas, knowledge of this sutta or that. Or even I've seen in some vipassana circles, some who hold on to whatever insights they've had as if it's theirs. Case in point, try to hold on to an insight unless you write it down. Because eventually in practice, if you're doing it right, they're going to be flowing in like Niagara. And try to capture every single droplet of a Niagara. So some people will even try to hoard, hold on to, collect, pile them up in their mental, spiritual garage. Undigested information. That's what it turns into. Completely useless. So Lord Buddha did not even have a single atom within him that was self-serving. However, if we do have that attitude, then we are no different than average puthujjanas. Puthujjanas are uneducated, not in the sense that they need to go to university, or have not, rather. No, you can have several PhDs from Harvard, Cambridge, Yale, you name it, and you would be a puthujjana, the dumbest person as far as the Dhamma is concerned. Because there is no warmth, there's no pulse in your heart as a person. There's no beat. There's no Dhamma. So self-service or self-serving attitude versus selflessness is the surest way to stay as far as possible from the Dhamma. And never the twain shall meet, as they say. Unless the person makes a shift. And that's where the stern attitude of a teacher comes in, to shake things up. The teacher, if they're a true kind of teacher, they have zero investments in the student doing these things. Again, it's not like the teacher is seeking the students to go and pay them or something, or give them donations, although I've seen a lot of people who do that, unfortunately. Again, that has nothing to do with the Dhamma. Your giving could be helping out your neighbor with their trash. It could be you leaning down and picking up a wrapping or some tissues that were left on the ground, some tossed, somebody ate a bar of chocolate or something, and they tossed the wrapping onto the ground. And the trash can, the bin is over there, 2 feet away. They didn't. And you see that, and you pick it up and you throw it in the trash bin. That's also service. Or when you see yourself in a very privileged position where you have something, you are encountering Dhamma, and there's people over there who are, you know that they're suffering. They have dukkha in their hearts. Why? Because they are clouded in the mind. They're looking, they're searching for something that you have access to now. Even though you see that, you say, no, I'm going to have to take care of this first. That is self-centeredness. That is spiritual greed. That's conceit. That is me, mine. What's in it for me? Now we are a thief. Yes, that's a thief. There's nothing honorable in that. Even though you might be practicing precepts, but you are holding on to, this is mine. Where all you have to do is open the floodgates, become a bridge, pass a word or two, apply your skill set. Take the Dhamma, open up the door, the window, so that the others could see some of that. And what they do with that, that's not your concern. You just made it available. Otherwise, you're nothing but a thief holding on to something that you think you got because you're special or you were lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. And no, it has nothing to do with your efforts in trying to find, roaming around the world, trying to find a teacher, climbing mountains with tooth and nail. None of that. It plays a tiny little small part in you finding the Dhamma. Why? Because that depends only on the generosity of the person who is passing it on to you, who's sharing the Dhamma with you. So you cannot take credit for that. Lord Buddha was generous enough to share that, the Dhamma, with us. And any self-respecting, any true teacher of the Dhamma will carry that tradition without keeping anything for him or herself. Nothing for him or herself. But we, on the receiving end of it, we think, okay, I got this very valuable thing. Let me just, no. Look at the gesture. Already you could see a thief here. I stole this. No one. It was given to you in broad daylight, with open hands. Lord Buddha would say, look, I keep nothing behind. Nothing behind me. I give everything. There's nothing hidden from you. That's why there is none and cannot be any secret teachings in this Dhamma and discipline. Anything claiming itself to be Dhamma, but also claiming to carry secret teachings, has nothing to do with Lord Buddha. We need to be tough on ourselves sometimes. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in the complacency ditch. It's inertia. It's so strong. Because we're fighting against the kileśas, and the kileśas know everything about us. And we have convinced ourselves that that's what we are. We are the kileśas, even though we don't like it. Some weeks ago, I think I mentioned how, what is it that we're bowing down to? Something like that. What is it that we're taking refuge in? Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, or Lobhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dosaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Mohaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Kileśas saranam gacchami. Am I doing that? Am I taking refuge in the defilements? That's what most of us are doing. So long as we are not calling things out the way they need to be called out. First in us. Am I treating the Dhamma like this? Are my windows open? Are the walls of my heart soft? What am I doing in return for the Dhamma? That's a good start. So there's nothing to fear. Nothing to fear that you're going to miss out if you don't do this. Already you found the Dhamma here. And when there is a need, and you are in a very privileged, unique, fortunate position to share, please do. Otherwise, what we would be doing then is simply standing in the way, blocking it while we're not even going in. While we're not even going in through the door, we're blocking it by not allowing others to go in. That's a terrible state of affairs. So oftentimes we don't think about the role of dana, or we just think about it in terms of financial aid or support. It's a small part, okay? Lord Buddha would urge Venerable Mahakassapa, who was the most reclusive, the most ascetic of his bhikkhus. So he would go into his kuti, Mahakassapa, and continue meditating in his cave kuti. And he would rarely show up at the main gatherings. I mean, you have suttas where Venerable Mahakassapa is there, but those are unique instances, circumstances. Or most probably, Lord Buddha had sent for him, because Mahakassapa, Venerable Mahakassapa, had a tendency of being very reclusive. Now, Lord Buddha would push and pull him, urging him to go out into the villages, to go more and visit the villagers more, to share Dhamma with them, to give them at least the opportunity of serving him food, a handful, a spoonful of rice. And he would, of course, his teacher is saying something, it's never going to be said twice. He would just do it. And the results were amazing for people and for Venerable Mahakassapa. He was a full-on arahant with both ways liberated, but in knowing and seeing how these people were now so joyful for having seen him, for having served him, for having heard the Dhamma from him, that's a two-way street, you know. It's not parasitical relationship. You know, parasitical relationship is a situation or a so-called relationship where one entity, one part is getting all the benefit while the other is being drained of life. That's a toxic relationship. That's a relationship definitely where there is no respect. There's no love, forget about it. There's none of that. So being generous and of service, and not to waste any opportunities in doing that, because any moment death could happen. About 10 days or so ago, a friend of mine, a fellow bhikkhu, died. I wasn't informed of this. up until like a few days later, I came across something online and I was, wow, a beautiful human being, a kind bhikkhu, a good bhikkhu, a good bhikkhu. And a few weeks prior, we had talked, and he had shared with me how much he wanted to go back to his native country and visit his family. But he hesitated. And I urged him every single time we talked, because I knew he missed his family and he had not seen them for years. Let's not waste time to do good. Doing good to others also means doing good to ourselves, being of service to ourselves. And that is where your practice grows. If you stop looking at Dhamma on your own terms, according to your own paradigms, then meaning you're living according to the Dhamma and its own terms, your life will change to the better. Your practice is going to grow in leaps and bounds, as they say. It won't be a fighting match. And you'll be able to see your kileśas loud and clear. But there needs to be that softness in your attitude. You know, I don't have all the answers. And why am I here in the Dhamma? Is it simply because I'm using it as an embellishment, a new accessory? It used to be something else, now it's this type of a deal? And looking at the attitude of what's in it for me and the ugliness pertaining to it, the way it is, and moving away from that as soon as possible. And being invested in other people around you, in their welfare, is one of the best ways to see if you do have the what's in it for me attitude. There was a couple in Savatthi. They were very poor, very, very, very poor. So poor, in fact, that they only had one single garment, one single piece of clothing between each other, a husband and a wife. A husband and a wife. So what they had done was basically made this arrangement where this shirt or garment would be worn by the wife during the daytime as she has to go and do her thing, let's say maybe get some water or work in the fields or something, but she has to cover herself with it. Otherwise, she's completely naked. And then she would come back home and the husband would borrow the shirt or the garment, and he would go and do whatever chores he has to do and work here and there or whatever. So when Lord Buddha had begun visiting and staying in Savatthi, what this couple had also done was add another segment. In fact, it was such a big segment of their day that the wife would put on her shirt during the day, during the morning, and she would go straight to Jetavana's Anathapindika's monastery to listen to Lord Buddha giving a Dhamma talk. And then after she would look, okay, it's sunset, okay, it's time for me to go back home. So she would hurry back home, and the husband would be impatiently waiting for her. And she would hand over the shirt to him, and he would put it on to cover his nakedness. And he would also go back to Savatthi, to Jetavana's monastery, to listen now to Lord Buddha giving another Dhamma talk. And this had been going on for some time. And Lord Buddha, as being the Buddha, he would scan the minds of those people present and what level or who was close to attaining Sakadagami, Sotapanna stage, stream winning stage, to see the Dhamma. Who was close in any of the other stages? And he saw this poor man. And Lord Buddha, knowing exactly where this person was in his development, shall we say, as in his spirituality, in his practice, and what was also his hang-up, what was also the thing that was holding him back. And Lord Buddha starts giving the listeners a Dhamma, beautiful Dhamma sharing on giving, dana. And usually Lord Buddha, whenever he gave a talk to lay people, he would always talk about dana first, especially those that were not yet established in the Dhamma. He would teach them of the wonderful qualities of being generous, of being of service, of giving. And that will allow the person to prepare the mind of the person. And already, even before you've left the discourse, the Dhamma talk, already the person is planning out what to do. In our family, growing up, nobody had said, "I love you." It was expressed in different ways, but never spoken. One time I was at a retreat years ago, 30 some years ago, in fact, and in Northern California. And one of the groups, there was different kinds of groups going on. One of them was about parents. And the question came up, have you ever told your parent that you love them, whether they're alive or not? And it hit me suddenly that I've expressed it in different ways, but I never had said the words, "I love you." Back then, my mother had already died years earlier, so all I had was my father. So already before I left the retreat, I was thinking about, and I was shaking. I was like, it's not. I'm not used to it. What if he mocks me? What if he's this? Because it's a very traditional, family dynamic. So that's not something. I mean, we never hugged, even like proper hugging. And I used to be a hugger. But those words. So already I started planning a picnic so that the whole family could come together, where I could find maybe a time for me to sneak in and grab my dad and pull him aside and go find myself a secluded space where I can, without embarrassment, say the words, "I love you." And lo and behold, the time came. I was planning everything, the picnic, this and that, where we were going to go. Finally, that day came, that Sunday. And it was a beautiful sunny day in Southern California. And finally, I was always scanning my father. I was like, is this a good time for me to go in? And I said, okay, now it is the time, or never. Never. So I go in and I say to my father, my late father, "Dad, can I speak with you?" And he's like, "Yes, yes." Immediately his mind went to like threat mode. Like, is he okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, son? Is there a problem? Do you need money? I said, "Dad, everything's fine. I just want to have this father and son moment, please." So we walked away finally over some small hills. Finally, I found myself in a nice, patch of grass, shaded area, beautiful place. And I turned towards him to face him. And meanwhile, I can sense his anxiety and mine. And I could barely muster up the courage to hold back the tears. And I finally said to him, "Thank you for everything. I never said that, but I want to thank you. But additionally, I want to say these words. I love you, Dad." And we both broke into tears. Now, that is also a form of service to oneself and to the other person. because that did not come easy, apparently. And for him also to hear it, because he was never used to hearing it ever. I mean, he pretty much had been had grown up without a father. First generation survivor of the Armenian genocide. He was lucky to have a father for some 3 years of his life. So, but the changes that occurred after that, it felt so liberating. And every time I got a chance, I would say it, so much so that my siblings, I infected my siblings with it. It took years. Every time I would hang up the phone with any of my siblings, my brothers or my sister, I would say, I love you. And they would say, yeah, or me too, until one of them actually broke through and said, I love you too. And I was like, yes. So it was, what a wonderful way of sharing. Now that is also being selfless. That's a manifestation of Mettā that we can bring into our lives. But coming back to the story of this man who was sitting, listening in that evening Dhamma talk, fully crowded area of Anathapindika's park, where Lord Buddha is giving the talk. The bhikkhus are there, the bhikkhunis are there, and the lay people are listening. And the king is there too, by the way, with his retinue. This man hears Lord Buddha giving the talk on the on Dana, on generosity, and he starts having the thought, what do I have? I want to give something to Lord Buddha. I want to give something. I want to give something. And he looks around, he doesn't have a thing. He doesn't have anything at home. His wife doesn't have a thing to give, to present to Lord Buddha. And he says, I got it. The robes, the shirt, the garment I'm wearing. I could give him that, but what would my wife say? And this is the only thing we have. This is our livelihood in a sense. She can't go outside without it. I can't go outside without it. So this is everything. This is life. And finally he says, you know what? I don't care. He removes the shirt, the garment, and now he's completely naked, and he folds it beautifully. And he puts it at the feet of Lord Buddha. And he says, yes, I conquered, he says. I won. I won. He's screaming out loud in joy. Naked, skinny little fella. And the Lord Buddha smiles, knowing full well what has taken place. The king, meanwhile, is observing this, and he turns to one of his ministers like, who's this guy? What's his story? What was this? What did he win? He doesn't have a thing. What did he conquer? He didn't have a thing. And king's men go and ask him questions, and they find out, and the king smiles too. And he says, give him my robe. Take him to his house, get him and his wife, have him be washed, etc. And now their residence is going to be in my palace, because he is going to be my finance minister. The man didn't do it for any of those reasons. He knew that his wife would also be okay, because she already had a strong faith as well. But even if she didn't, probably he would have still done it. But that was not even the case, because he knew they had so much faith in Lord Buddha, in the Dhamma, in the Dhamma. So how much are we invested in our spiritual progress? Is it what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? I mean, you have retreats being done left and right where people go to gain one jhana after another, after another, after another, and hoping that they are somehow going to be hitting that mark, that jackpot, if you will, even though it's a vulgar image, but that's what it's turned to in some circles. They're going to hit nibbana while pursuing self-centered attitude. I've witnessed this on 2 different occasions in 2 different parts of the world at retreats, where individuals who were supposed to be in the 5th and 6th jhanas, somewhere over there in that region, they see someone in pain and they have the ability. This one particular person was an acupuncturist and a chiropractor. He had those skills. And he had just helped a woman earlier that day, actually less than an hour earlier. And finally, this other man in pain from long sittings comes in and asks and breaks the silence and says, please, please, I saw how helpful you were to her. Could you please, just 5 minutes, you don't have to work as much as you worked on her. 5 minutes, could you please, I know what's wrong with my back, could you adjust? And he said, no, I'm on retreat. What? Retreat. What kind of retreat? Mettā retreat. Mettā. Someone is in pain in front of his eyes. So we need to ask what it is that we're doing in the Dhamma. Why are we in the Dhamma? Are we justifying our thievery techniques, our let me go in there and grab as much of it as I can attitude? Because you might as well go and plow a field, sow some seeds, and you might get a decent crop. That would be better than to pretend that we're on the path while we are pursuing self-centered goals, even nibbana, at the cost of my humanity, of what I can do to you, for you. So let us bring in both service, giving, being generous with our abilities, time, compassion, and practicing. They go hand in hand. And if we have any doubts, look at Lord Buddha's example. Look at any of the Arya Savaka's examples. Late Ajahn Mun, he did not even have a single temple or monastery for himself. He didn't. Now every Joe Schmo everywhere is building they're building a monastery for them. Good, fine. But he didn't want to possess anything. He kept on moving. He kept on moving from one village, one area of Thailand to another, sometimes into Burma, this and that. But they're always in the giving, 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 owning nothing. That's why we become bhikkhus. So as lay practitioners, there's so much to be gained by you from the Dhamma if you only allow the Dhamma to work on its own terms, not yours. So let's get rid of all those agendas, even the secret ones, especially the secret ones. But please utilize your sati to identify them. Utilize Dhamma Vichaya to find out where these are hidden in the nooks and crannies of the subconscious mind. And they will show up in the tiniest little insignificant moments where you're interacting with the world. But we need to be there mentally to see it, mindfully to see these, and then be honest with them and say, so I do have that kilesha. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Let's work on that. But not lie about it and try to patch it up like that flipping houses thing. Getting this idea, getting this thing from the Bojjhangas, 7 factors of awakening, is saying, yes, 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 I'm going to apply this to cover that. No, no, no. It will never work. The Dhamma is never cosmetic. Let's turn our lives into the Dhamma. But we have to give up what we're holding so dear first, because our hands are occupied. Our hearts are occupied. Why? Because the kileśas are there. They're having a blast. And Nibbana can only happen in our heart. But it can't come in unless these guys are out. Simple as that. So let's bring in humility, honesty, perseverance, honesty again, and selflessness. So I wanted to address this because this is necessary in today's world, especially in Dhamma circles. Not just our circle here, of course, but everywhere. I'm noticing this a lot. And something has to be said about this. And I have not heard anyone speaking on this, so it must be said, if we want the Dhamma to continue to be around for some time. And of course, for us to benefit from it, to gain from it, gain wisdom, and sharing the fruits of that, just like Venerable Mahakassapa and all the other arahants. So I will stop here and open for any questions, comments, thoughts you might have, again, pertaining to the Dhamma and the practice. I hope this is helpful. Hands, can't see any hands. Dhamma is clean. It's humbling. It's beautiful. And no one's going to give that to us. If you're practicing precepts, it's to taste some of that beauty. It's wonderful. That tasting of it keeps us going. So let's come through the front gates, not the back window, crawling in like a thief. And give and give and give. Give from your time, give from your skills. You're not going to die. Even if you have less sleep, you're not going to die. And if you did, we're going to die anyhow, right? You might as well die with your face and your heart smiling from ear to ear. Well, if there's no questions, we can just do the sharing of merits. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of wholesome happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May the supreme power and blessings of the Triple Gem be upon you and your loved ones, protecting you, keeping you on the path and your struggles, reminding you to stay soft in your heart, with yourself, in your mind. Dhamma is real. And you can realize it. You will realize it if you live the spiritual path according to its own terms, not yours, the Dhamma's terms. Oh yes, the next week we'll have the Sutta exploration series again. It is the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, and I've been working on translating it, and it's done, but it's not done because I'm still tweaking it and refining it and revising it, and it's a very long sutta. Came out to be, I think, 35 pages, 12 font, single space. So I think it's single space. Anyhow, it will be, I'm dedicating 3 weeks, consecutive weeks to it, to do it justice. And I'm going to try to finish the sutta without rushing either, but I'm going to try to cover it in those 3 weeks. Again, they're going to be, repeated weeks, so we're not going to have the 2-hour sittings in between. So 3 weeks of sutta exploration, so we don't lose the momentum. It's a very powerful sutta, and it's beautiful. And so I will be revising and finishing it, putting the finishing touches to it this week, and I will ask Dhammadina to send it out to you, a copy of it, PDF, and I will try, if I can, to record it and post it up on YouTube as well, narrating it. We'll see. So until then, be well, practice, not just on the cushion, not just on the cushion. In fact, away from the cushion is where the fun starts. So be well, and I'll see you next week. Sukhi hotu.